I think that this is a good time of year for parents and students to be thinking about what sort of classes they should be taking in high school. So parents and students can talk to their guidance counselors at the school right now and say, what classes should I start taking if I'm a middle schooler or if I'm a 9th or 10th grader, so that I'm getting ready for AP classes in 11th and 12th grade.
The Soviet Union's launch of the satellite Sputnik on October 4, 1957, spurred the United States' commitment to increase and expand the education system. As the new programs gained momentum, educational demographics and the material covered changed as well. There became an increased emphasis on testing, math and sciences, advanced classes, and expansion of higher education. While America's focus on educational success resulted in positives, it had some negative effects as well. New educational reform movements have attempted to maintain academic standards while scaling back the focus on conventional testing. The education revolution in America, which began in earnest in the 1950s, dramatically transformed the demographics of the college population and the materials students learn. However, in recent years, education reform in the 21st century has created a backlash against the high standards and competitive system. Standardized testing is not as recent of a concept as most people believe. The Chinese used tests to screen government employees in the 7th century, and by the time the printing press was invented in Europe, more experts were calling for standardized tests. Horace Mann argued for tests in the 1800s as a part of his educational reform in America. In 1905, a French psychologist named Alfred Binet created a standardized intelligence test. Building on Binet's idea, Frederick J. Kelly, a professor at the University of Kansas, created a multiple-choice intelligence test in 1914. These intelligence tests were often far too subjective, and the conditions of many test takers, such as non-English speaking immigrants on Ellis Island, led to a movement away from standardized intelligence tests into standardized tests as a method for examining learning ability. The College Board began in 1900 under the title of the College Entrance Examination Board. The board used an essay-oriented test graded and created by professors to screen college applicants. In 1926, the board introduced the SAT multiple choice in order to more efficiently and quickly screen students. After the U.S. declaration of war in 1941, the board decided to eliminate the essay test due to the suspected shortage of papers and professors to grade. Essays would not return to the SAT until 2005, though they returned to testing in 1955 with the advanced placement exams. The American College Testing Program began in 1959 as a part of the American response towards education after launching of the Soviet satellite Sputnik. This test, combined with the SAT, ultimately led to the end of individual entrance examinations. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union spawned the first encompassing federal education legislation. On October 4, 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the world's first artificial satellite. The launching marked the start of the space age and the United States-Soviet Union space race. Many Americans were startled who believed that the Soviet Union was technologically backwards and inferior to the United States. Atomic weapons pioneer Edward Teller noted,
"America has lost a battle more important and greater than Pearl Harbor."
The launching of Sputnik symbolized to the whole world that the Soviet Union was surpassing the United States in missile technology. Americans feared that the Soviet Union's ability to launch satellites in space could lead to the successful launch of ballistic missiles from Europe to the United States and the start of a nuclear war. In response, Congress and President Eisenhower passed the National Defense Education Act in 1958, which was the first time in the decade the President recommended deferring plans for the education system. The act provided $887 million over 4 years for education that could support various national security goals, especially focusing on training scientists. The National Defense Education Act regulated and increased loans to college students, focusing on math and science-based curriculums. In July of 1958, Congress and President Eisenhower passed the National Aeronautics and Space Act, which officially created NASA. Prior to the 20th century, opportunities for higher level education existed in America, but only for the wealthy. At the beginning of the 20th century, around 1,000 colleges existed, with about 160,000 students in the United States. The vast majority of students were white males who came from wealthy families. From the 1920s to the mid-1950s, many schools placed quotas and other means to restrict enrollment for minority students. The implementation of the SAT helped restrict many minorities from attending college because a large portion were immigrants or people who lacked a thorough high school education. Statistical evidence proved that minorities struggled with the SAT compared to American-born whites. This allowed colleges to restrict the number of minorities that would attend their college. In 1896, the Supreme Court established the separate but equal education ruling. Thurgood Marshall was the lawyer who eventually had the ruling overturned in the case of Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka. Marshall had been denied entry to the University of Maryland Law School because of his race. Ultimately, Marshall attended the Howard University of Law and became one of the most prominent African-American lawyers in history. Marshall represented a large majority of African Americans who were rejected from universities solely based on their race. Prior to the Education Revolution in the 60s, women had higher education opportunities, but they were very limited. In 1972, Title IX was passed, and it prevented educational program discrimination based on sex. The combination of the launch of Sputnik and the civil rights movement allowed greater opportunities for minorities to seek higher education. Affirmative action began being applied to the college application process. Race, ethnicity, native language, social class, geographical origin, parental attendance of the university in question, and/or gender were things now considered during the application process, which have changed the demographics of people attending college. In 1976, minorities were 15.4% of the students enrolled in higher level education. By 2007, the population of higher level students was composed of 32.2% minorities. In the last 60 years, the college population has greatly transformed because of increased focus on education and the different civil rights movements. Advanced placement examinations began in 1959, birthed by the College Board, the same minds beyond the SAT. AP classes were created in order to offer advanced students an opportunity to earn college credits while still in high school. The examination at the end of the year directly correlated to the amount of credit, if any, the student could receive in college for taking that course. The increasing college admissions of the era saw an increase in the AP enrollment as well. As time has progressed, AP enrollment has only continued to increase. However, recent backlash has occurred against the focus on the AP program. Teachers argue that the demanding amounts of material require them to teach to the test, resulting in a less broad understanding of the topic as a whole. A study group of teachers, when asked why they thought students took the AP classes, came back with a 60% result of because their parents and college counselors told them they need to. More schools and even the College Board have begun to rethink the program. This is because the original intent of the AP program was to use it to earn college credit, not as a part of the admissions process, as stated by Dr. Gieser, a professor at the University of California, Berkeley. Some schools are beginning to stop offering APs, and those that do are developing new screening methods to determine who can take the classes. The public school system of Scarsdale, New York has created its own advanced topics classes in order to avoid the chaos of the AP classes while still preparing the students for the exams. This is one specific example, while the College Board, in response to recent criticism of the biology and United States history exam in particular, has begun reformatting the tests themselves on a national level. Starting in 2012, the AP Biology test taken by students will be this revised edition, followed by U.S. History in 2013. This is the first time that the board is focused on the classroom curriculum and not only the tests. The education revolution in the 50s and 60s increased the focus on specific material and allowed for an increase in the enrollment of minorities in the college population. This opened up new opportunities for many students in the United States and allowed college dreams to become realities for whole new demographics in the country. However, the resulting focus on testing and academic competition has created a system that does not effectively teach students all of the information they are required to learn. The reform that has begun to take place in schools around the country and nationally with the College Board display America's resilience and determination to never fall behind again.
It's time to expect more from our students. It's time to start rewarding good teachers. It's time to prepare every child everywhere in America to outcompete any worker anywhere in the world.